EntwineNosh. My name is Josh McHudis. I work at JDC Entwine. So just a little bit of background if these acronyms are new to you. So JDC stands for the Joint Distribution Committee. It's the world's oldest and largest Jewish humanitarian organization. And Entwine is its young adult platform. And today we're starting one of my favorite programs, which is called EntwineNosh, where we're really just using food as a way of exploring global Jewish communities and diving further into global Jewish responsibility. So the way that today's call will work is we'll be moderating the chat. So as questions come up, please feel free to throw them in there. We'll be looking for those, and we'll have a time a little bit later in today's call where we'll get to bring some of those questions to today's guests, which brings me to the really exciting moment to introduce our guests. We are joined by Dacha today. So Dacha is a Brooklyn-based pop-up serving incredible, absolutely delicious, eye candy type Eastern European food. It's the brainchild of two amazing chefs who we are really, really so lucky to learn from today. And they're not just genius cooks, but they're really wonderful people who are deeply committed to community and to bringing good into the world. We're so lucky to be learning from them today, from Jessica and Trina. And with that, I'm really happy to turn it over to them.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Trina.
And we are Dacha. And you are currently in our kitchen with us where Dacha started.
Yeah, this is a fourth floor walk up in Bed-Stuy, and really excited to be able to cook and, I don't know, just cook with you guys and like have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, Dacha is an Eastern European inspired pop-up that both Trina and myself started back in October. We have worked in restaurants for many years, and we both worked in restaurants prior to COVID. And we both kind of were two chefs without, restaurants and kitchens to call our own. And we were both at home cooking a lot. And I think much like everyone else, we were cooking a lot of comfort food. And for us, that was a lot of Eastern European food. My background is Jewish, Latvian, Ukrainian. And, we just saw a trend that this was really the food that brought us comfort and joy in a time when things were really uncertain. And that's kind of the inception of Dacha, and it's been really a privilege to get to cook this food that means so much to us for the last 5 months. Yeah. Which brings us to today's lesson, and what we are making is piroshki. And so for anyone who's not familiar with piroshki, they are a typical Ukrainian fried yeasted dough, although they're commonly found all around Eastern Europe, and they are filled with just an array of so many different fillings, and you can bake them, you can fry them. Our house is a little preferential towards the fried version, and so that's what we're doing today. So basically over here, I have my bowl, and we're going to be putting our yeast and our sugar inside with a little bit of lukewarm water and just kind of letting it sit and bloom and activate that yeast. So we're going to just give it a little stir. And we're going to just let it sit for a few minutes and let it do its thing before we keep going with it. And so, like we advertised, we are having cocktail hour, which I think a lot more people have been doing lately, and we are no different. And today we are drinking 6-month skin contact Georgian wine.
Oh, it's my turn.
Yeah, it's your turn.
Oh, Yeah, we actually are super lucky people that we have a really good friend that is opening a wine shop and provided us with this really awesome bottle of wine from Dacha, and it's incredible.
I don't know if you can see, but I'm going to hold it up. It's this beautiful amber color. And we were talking about this right before everyone joined us, but for me, it tastes of fresh pepper on like a sunflower seed, like a sunflower field, and melon, and it sort of adds this nice little bright acidity to what is sort of a little bit of a heavier dish.
I mean, yeah, we like I was gonna say, like, we definitely are so lucky. We posted on our Instagram, Black Cat Wines is actually a really wonderful shop. And it's going to be opening in Brooklyn, so stay tuned, and we'll put another link up on Instagram so you can follow them. And the importer is actually a really wonderful group of humans as well, and they're called Black Lamb Wine. So definitely check them all out if you have a chance to, and definitely drink their wine that they bring to us.
Yes, we would be excited to find out what the rest of you guys are drinking out there. But so back to our piroshki, the yeast and the sugar have had a couple of minutes to kind of sit and do their thing. And so to this mixture, we're going to add 1 egg, 2 tablespoons of melted butter. And if you're trying to keep carb and you don't want to do butter, you can use any kind of neutral oil, any kind of fat really will work in this case. So we have our egg, we have our butter, we have our milk, just kind of going to whisk it in together. And then we're going to add our all-purpose flour and our salt to that. You can use whatever you want to mix it. We also in our recipe said that you can use a stand mixer. Today we're just using good old-fashioned fork and bowl, and then our hands. Sort of the way I grew up, you know, making it. And, you know, I think a lot of people get intimidated with yeasted doughs, and this is definitely one of those recipes that you don't need to be nervous about making. You know, my grandmother used to, you know, when they would make this, you know, they're like a handful of this, a spoon of that, you know, and a lot of Eastern Europeans will measure something with like a teacup. So it's like 3/4 of a teacup, you know, a palm full of salt. And, you know, even though I'm a trained pastry chef, it's funny because I always get really nervous making these kinds of doughs, even though, you know, people have been making, you know, this, you know, kind of food for years and years and years. And honestly, you know, they're not using a scale or anything fancy, and it comes out great. So at this point, I have kneaded it just really with the fork until you get sort of this shaggy dough. And at this point, I'm going to turn it out onto the table. Thank you. So I'm going to just dust the table with a little bit of flour because it's a pretty sticky dough, but don't be really intimidated by it because you're going to, Trina's just over in the corner taking all of my dirty dishes. So not all too different for us here than any other day. But so you're going to kind of coat it in that flour. And at this point, it's like a very shaggy, kind of soft, supple dough, which is going to lend itself really beautifully to the end product when we fry it and it puffs up and you get this like really beautiful, just like soft, you know, melt in your mouth fried dough. You know, piroshki are really kind of a special thing for me personally, and really for Dacha, just because, you know, my parents came from Latvia and Ukraine in the 80s, and they were kind of part of this, you know, large immigration from the former, at that time, still Soviet Union, now former Soviet Union. And, you know, it was kind of difficult for them to assimilate at first. And there was a huge emphasis really at that point on really proving how American you are. And, you know, it kind of translated to a few different arenas and facets of life. But one of the things that didn't really change and was always sort of a source of pride is that, you know, connection to food. And one of those, items was definitely piroshki. I grew up in Long Island outside of the city, and obviously plenty of grocery stores. But I remember very vividly taking these trips with my family in the car to Brighton Beach, which is in Brooklyn. And, we would do all of our grocery shopping, and it felt very special to be able to kind of have this connection and be in touch with this, culture and this cuisine through food. And, after we did all of our grocery shopping, we would stop by the different piroshki stands, which for anyone who's ever been to Brighton they're a very particular thing. Everyone has their favorite, piroshki stand. For me personally, and I can say for Trina, Gold Label is ours. And it's one of the few that kind of is the most reminiscent of the kind that we used to eat as kids. But, everyone in my family had their own sort of particular favorite. My mom loved the apple, my sister loved the sauerkraut, my dad loved the poppy seed. And I think all of us unanimously, whenever it was sour cherry season, would go absolutely crazy for those. And so, food has just kind of been this really interesting way, and I think across the board for a lot of children of immigrants, to kind of stay connected to your roots when, everything else is really changing and trying to assimilate and kind of be the same. We've talked about this a lot, but I was a very awkward, strange kid, and, not very cool. And it was funny because all of these kids were coming in with, their brown paper bag lunches, and, they're eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and, snackables like Dunkaroos and like all of these things that I think a part of me kind of wanted to be the same in that sense, because, it'll look good. But at the same time, my nanny and my mom were packing me these lunches of like beautiful, like Russian black bread that's like rich with like molasses and a little bit of cocoa and rye, slathered in like thick, beautiful butter and salmon roe or chopped liver with like pickles. And, I definitely was ridiculed for it, but it almost felt like a sense of pride. Every day I would sort of unwrap my lunch and see, what special thing was in there, because I knew that it was different, but I also knew that it was sort of who I was and where I came from and who my family was. And we kind of laughed and joked about the fact that I was so proud that for show and tell one day, I had my nanny pack up a cow tongue for me. Like, we're not talking about like a piece, we're not talking about like a little thing. We're talking about this like 5-pound giant cow tongue where you can see the taste buds completely intact. And I remember unraveling like the piece of aluminum that it came in, and no one had any interest in eating it. And I remember just sitting in the back with like my, I think it was like a plastic fork and knife cutting up the cow tongue and just like eating it by myself. So, I think that there's always just been this ingrained love of food and sort of what it represents. And it's something that I think we all kind of share. So at this point, the dough's almost finished. It's smooth. It's not really sticking to the counter anymore. Everything's incorporated and it feels really beautiful. I'm gonna knead it for a couple more minutes. But so back to the whole point of food, I ended up sort of really keeping that, love of food for most of my upbringing. And so when it came time to figuring out what I wanted to do, I knew that I wanted to do something with food. And so I knew that I wanted to go to culinary school. And I think for, any child, I think of immigrants, there's an emphasis on the American dream. And the American dream is to get sort of this like high paid, well-to-do job, and that provides your parents with a sense of security that your child's not going to work too hard, they're going to be financially secure. And I remember telling my parents that I wanted to go to culinary school and be a chef, and I remember just the face that they made, and you could tell they were devastated. But it's, it was really sweet to see the fact that my mom, who came around, became absolutely the biggest supporter of us. And she used to joke that we were going to be her superstars. And it's very funny, but like, you know, to get a parent who like really believes in you, and, you know, especially someone who kind of came from a really kind of tough upbringing, and, you know, this sort of life of scarcity in the former Soviet Union, to support something that, you know, is definitely not the safest choice, was definitely something, you know, that I think I felt lucky, and I think Trina felt lucky that we were able to sort of have that. But so at this point, you have this beautiful smooth dough. If you gently poke it, it very slowly bounces back, and it has this beautiful elasticity to it. And so at this point, it's going to go into an oiled bowl and covered just with a dish towel or plastic wrap. And it's going to prove until it's about doubled in size. So if you want, you can prove it on the counter, or if you want, what we're going to do today to kind of speed up the process is I've had our oven preheating, and I have it turned off now. So it's kind of warm and toasty at around maybe 100 degrees. So it's going to go in the oven for the next 20 minutes to let it prove before we move forward with the next step in the Pitashiki.
And I am here to ensure happy hour. So.
That's a very important part of the cooking and eating process. So now while the dough is proving, we're going to take some time to ask Jessica and Trina some questions. So I've seen some that have started to come in into the Q&A. So please keep them coming. The first thing I see isn't a question, but Judy Goodman just wanted to say hello from home.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Always important to get that love and support. And we have Jason Wong who's asking, please talk more about the pop-up. How did you get it started, and what are you serving? What makes it special?
I think our pop-up special, I'm gonna kind of take this one because I am not Eastern European in any way, shape, or form. Unfortunately, really. Jess and I decided to start doing this pop-up. It was literally just after we had both kind of been furloughed and kind of like lost our jobs. And we were just kind of trying to come up with really fun ways to be like, you know, let's, you know, when you're used to working 14 plus hours a day, you're like, let's be productive, let's do something fun, but like maybe we can do something fun that's for us. So we just started kind of cooking the food we always had cooked. And we realized that we wanted to kind of create a bridge to, you know, people that may not have had access to, you know, feeling comfortable to going to like Brighton Beach in Brooklyn, to like ordering anything really, which I can definitely attest to as being very difficult, unless you're with somebody that is, you know, Russian speaking perhaps. So yeah, we wanted to bring it to the forefront and just have fun with it. And
but if they want to know what Dacha is known for, it's definitely our pilmeni, which Trina 1000% has taken over. And it's like she's been making them her whole life and eating them her whole life. And I can say this, but the ones that she makes are the best that I've ever tasted.
We have a lot of fun with them. They're very time consuming, but they're very special to Dacha, I guess.
Nice. And I know that you have a special pilmeni like contraption. Can you
actually,
can you just show that to the audience?
We have these hanging up right now, but we would love to make them by hand, but we realize that's not realistic for what we're trying to do in the volume. So this is actually one of the pilmeni makers. The molds, you can get them anywhere, and it's pretty easy to do actually. So if you're feeling ambitious, maybe we'll do another class. It'll be all about pilmeni. You never know, but they're a lot of fun.
Nice. And where did the name Dacha come from?
So Dacha is just, it's a name for what's commonly a second home or a summer home that's found in Eastern Europe. And they're no frills, they're very minimal, but they're very functional and
Kind of like our apartment.
minimal and functional. But the whole point of dachas is that they serve as a escape from city life for most of Eastern Europe, and they're also sort of this sense of self-sufficiency. Most people who have dachas are on plots of land. They grow their own produce. They do a lot of fermenting. It's sort of where families gather, and you kind of get to reinvigorate yourself by being, in touch with the outdoors. And it felt very much what we were trying to achieve with Dacha, this sense of escapism, but also getting back to your roots.
Nice. That feels very, very relevant over this past challenging year.
Yes, it does.
And what's next for Dacha? Where do you see your new business going?
You could say, yeah. So Dacha has some really big news that's coming, but in the meantime, we can say that we are no longer cooking out of our apartment. As sad as we will be to finally leave the house, which we won't be sad at all, we are going to be moving into a commercial kitchen. So we will be able to bring a lot more Dacha, a lot more often, and a lot more of it to people.
Wow, this is very exciting, and this is kind of breaking news, right?
I know that we're being very quiet about it, but we're very excited, and it's happening very soon.
That's very exciting, and a well-deserved expansion. So that's exciting that more people will be able to get it, and that you'll have a little bit more space to do the cooking.
Yeah, we're looking forward to the more space.
So we have a question that came in specifically for Trina. So how has your education been, like getting to know Eastern European food? Has it been fun learning to cook a new type of cuisine?
First and foremost, it's mostly eating it first. So I had a really good teacher, actually. Well, it was funny because when we first met, she kind of didn't really tell me that she was Eastern European. And then I heard her screaming into her phone, but it was in a language. And I was like, I don't know what language you're speaking. And she's like, oh, it's Russian. And I was like, oh, okay. And after that, I was like, so why don't you cook any food for me ever? And she was like, I don't know. So we just we started going on adventures, specifically to Brighton Beach, because that's where we are. And it's just an incredible experience. When you are in this kind of cuisine and culture, it's just so celebratory. And I feel especially this past year, we needed to celebrate something. And I feel Eastern European cuisine specifically, no matter what's happening in the world, they find a way to celebrate the everyday. And that's kind of why Dacha wants to amplify that, is through that food. And so for me, the best way I learned about Eastern European cuisine was by eating it and being out of my comfort zone and going to Russian banquets. We have our family, Luza and Alex, and we are lucky that we can go to these places and experience these things here. And it's just I don't know, it's a very special culture to be a part of. So being able to cook it is even better,
Jessica,
I get really excited when I hear her talk about it, just because I feel she brought it back into my life, just because I think that I spent so long really just kind of not embracing it. And so to hear her talk about it, I always get choked up.
Wow, it's really beautiful. And so Jessica, has sort of having someone who's an outsider to the cuisine and the culture made you see it in a new or different way? Absolutely.
I mean, when you grow up eating this food and it's this is low. When you grow up eating this food, it's commonplace, and to kind of see it fresh from someone's eyes who's never really experienced it, and to see them get so excited and curious about it, it almost reignites your curiosity about it and your excitement about it. And also just kind of exploring it together is a different experience, because obviously, you know, I have the memories of what it was like when I was growing up, but it's a very different sort of experience to get to like create this roadmap together of what our vision of it is. And that's been probably the most exciting part of this whole thing.
Nice. And I just have to ask, can you tell us what it's like living, working, doing everything together, and finding the right balance? Do you have any advice for anyone else out there?
I mean, it's like we've kind of done this like forever. Like actually this year was probably the most time we've spent together in like the 10 years we've been together, which has actually been really awesome. We you like this? Yeah, do you not like it? Oh, okay, never mind. We've also worked in restaurants together over the years. In obviously I don't do the pastry aspect of Dacha, and she does the pastry, and I do more of the savory aspect, and we do everything together. But you know, we have a separation, and we have lives outside of, you know, not as much now because of COVID, but like
Eventually we will.
I think, I don't know, like we work really well together, and it actually makes us a little bit more codependent, I feel a little bit, which is,
Well, because Trina now is no longer my wife. She's also my wife and my business partner. And so, you know, it's an interesting sort of transitional relationship, but at the same time, I get to see Trina, you know, in the professional sense, and I get to see her really like embracing her craft and creating these dishes that are familiar to me, but they're still new because it's her take on it. And it's almost like dating all over again, because you're just kind of like, oh, I was like, well, what are you doing? And you know, it's exciting, and it's different, and also just a really humbling experience to sort of create this, you know, vision together. Don't get us wrong, it's not perfect. We argue, and you know, you need a lot of patience and really know how to communicate. And we are working on the communication, specifically on my part, because Eastern Europeans are known for being very private.
I mean, in kitchens, we have lineup before service, and we are like, let's talk about this dish and how we can make it better. And Jess is like, what do you mean? So when we do our version of lineup, which is like when we've been testing or right before, we have like one of our pop-ups.
Yeah, it's difficult to have your significant other critique you, but it's all for the greater good of Dacha.
Amazing. We've got a comment and question from Rachel Broder saying, I grew up in a Ukrainian Jewish family and can really relate to your story, so thank you for sharing it with us. As someone who only really experienced Eastern European food from my grandmother's kitchen or shops in Brighton Beach, it's really exciting to see your menus and try your food. I'm curious to hear about your recipe development process. Are you using family recipes combined with some of the techniques you've learned as professionally trained chefs? Or are you starting from scratch, emulating some of your favorite dishes?
I mean, I think first and foremost, we base everything kind of on Jess's experience growing up. And then from that, we definitely go towards, we kind of throw our chef skills right out the window. And we just start with like the traditional family recipe, and we build off of that. And the final product that we hope will reflect a little bit more of where we spent the last, 10 to 12 years of our life in the professional realm. But at the same time, we want people to be able to relate to something that their grandma made, but maybe a whole new experience from that.
Yeah, it's really tough also in general when you're trying to create a dish that has so much sort of significance and relevance in people's lives from memory. If you're trying to recreate this dish that your grandmother made, and if you don't have the actual recipe, and even if you did, 9 out of 10 times, you're not going to nail it. It's very difficult to recreate that nostalgic memory because it has like a time and a place. But we definitely lean into those roots, and we try and take, those the best of sort of memories of these dishes and bring it into, 2021, and what does it mean to us as two queer, chefs who have embarked on, this business together. So, it's kind of striking that balance of old and new.
Mm. And kind of similarly along the lines of, it's striking a balance between different things or combining different influences. Jessica, how do you sort of see, is there a difference to you between Jewish food and Eastern European food, or is it all kind of mixed together?
I think it's interesting just because for a long time, I didn't know that a lot of the dishes that I grew up eating were Jewish. I thought they were Russian. And it's an interesting thing to realize now. But, I didn't think of challah as being like a Jewish bread. I didn't think of gefilte fish as being like a Jewish dish that a lot of people apparently don't like. There was sort of this like melding of the two, and they didn't really dissect from each other. Like it wasn't Russian and Jewish, it was like one single entity, and there wasn't really a differentiation. I think for my family in particular, we were definitely like Russian first, and that was, I think, just a product of when my parents grew up. Sorry, that's our fryer. But my parents grew up in a very particular time in Soviet history. They grew up in the 40s and 50s, and, there was such an emphasis on being Russian. And, when I was growing up, I honestly didn't even know that there were, I thought Latvia and Ukraine were states in Russia. I didn't know that like they were their like own country with its own identity, dialect, cuisine, and history. And, but yeah, for my family, I think that really being Jewish and being Russian were one and the same. Story. Oh, right. Yeah. Trina once told my mom that I wasn't Jewish just because we're not practicing. And my mother definitely turned around and just gave her this look. And she didn't raise her voice, but she was like, if the mother is Jewish, she was like, the child is Jewish. And it was like, that was the end of that discussion. And Trina was like, you got it.
To be fair, I didn't even know. I didn't even know that you were even at some point practicing.
Yeah, I don't even know if Trina knew I was Jewish.
I actually did not. So
it's a development.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the way that the identities overlapped and intersect in different kinds of ways, and how that also shows up in the food.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who thinks, Eastern European food, that's just meat and potatoes?
You come on over to Dacha and we'll change your mind.
I think that's a very American perspective, to be honest. When I hear people say that, I think that there's definitely like a stigmatization of what Eastern European food is. But when you think of just the sheer landscape of how much land like Russia occupied, it would be very crazy to think that it's this singular, monotonous, meat and potatoes sort of cuisine. And this is coming from someone who literally loves meat and potatoes. I could live on potatoes, like mashed potato, fried potato, call it a day, I'm happy. But, you really, when you look at sort of the geography of what the former Soviet Union was, you have Latvia, where my mom grew up, which is very similar to, Nordic cuisine. You have smoked fish. It's a fishing sort of, it's a fishing country. You're on the water. They smoke fish, cure fish paste, it's very Nordic in that sort of with the curing and the smoking. And then you go to Ukraine, which literally has been praised as having some of the most fertile, gorgeous soil in the world. There were people who were like selling Ukrainian soil on the black market. It was so fertile. And you have these beautiful just produce and grains, and it's, it's just very different and individualistic. And it's kind of been a beautiful thing about Dacha for me, is really kind of diving into what makes these places so special and so different, and really like learning about it, because those are my roots. And, to have Trina alongside on this kind of journey of discovery, is really exciting.
mean, we totally nerd out. We're like, did you know this about this? And this was grown here. It's just, I feel like every dish we're like,
I mean,
learning.
it's especially as chefs, it's of course exciting because as chefs to like discover these, you know, customs and traditions of making, you know, different dishes is, of course, you're going to get excited because you're like, I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know this technique. I didn't know this method. I didn't know the origin story of this dish that we love. And, you know, that might be one of the most exciting parts of what we're doing. Like, really just like the education of it.
And so Jackie Fishman has a question, very, very sort of similar in terms of the research. Where do you go for quality Russian recipes? Any favorite cookbooks for those looking to cook more Russian foods?
Well, I would say that our household is definitely like an Olya Hercules fan base. You know, I've definitely talked about this a ton, but I didn't really know that this kind of food could be, you know, I don't want to say cool, but like modern and accessible and relevant. And, you know, I got to meet her a few years ago at a dinner that she had actually hosted in Brooklyn. And I got to meet her briefly. And like, we've stayed in touch on social media, but we have all of her cookbooks. And to really kind of see her lead this path, her cuisine and food is like a beautiful modern interpretation, I think, of what a lot of us consider to be familiar home cooking, but definitely reimagined. So she's definitely a huge resource for us.
Nice, good to know. And Shauna just put her website in the chat. So go ahead and check that out if you're looking to dive further in.
Absolutely.
Have you both ever been to the former Soviet Union?
No.
We would love to, and I think we're still learning about, obviously, you know, the concerns about being two queers that are married, you know, traveling, and I don't think we've had the chance to really investigate what travel is like there, because, you know,
that's sort of been another layer of what Dacha really also means for us, because I think a part of my veering away from like the culture and the cuisine was sort of feeling like I wasn't welcome into the club. You know, I love being Latvian Ukrainian. Like it feels like it's in my bones, and it's who I am, and it's where I come from. But there's a part of me that doesn't always feel welcome into that, you know, community. And so we would love nothing more than to go, but also a part of, you know, being who we are is wanting to go to places that want to embrace us for who we are and not have to hide who we are. And so that's kind of another aspect of Dacha. And another thing where, like, we've had tons of Eastern European, you know, people in the queer community who have come to Dacha and have been like inspired, or not inspired, but feel for the first time like they belong, and like this is an ownership, that they like belong here and they have access to it, and that it's, you know, it's their rightful kind of, you know, it's their birthright to be able to claim it as their own. So that's been another thing that's been really special to us.
That's very powerful, and it's very, I mean, it's wonderful that that you've created the space that allows that to happen, and it just adds to the meaning that you already gave to the to Dacha itself.
We try.
So I'll.
Sorry, I don't think we have a guest. Sorry.
Always important to have a cat guest during a Zoom call in 2020.
He's over here crying.
So I'm going to take myself myself off and let you all get back to
Perfect.
to the next step.
We'll talk to you soon. All right. So for anyone who has kind of been sticking through the Q&A, yes, this is our baby Bagheera. He's usually our kitchen helper, and he's also head of HR here at Dacha. So over here, I have our induction burner going, and we've been slowly heating our oil to around like 330 to 350. And so that's kind of over here heating. And right now we're going to go into assembling the piroshki. is very excited. So gonna add a little bit more flour, and it feels really good. The dough is really nice and soft. It's aerated, like really, and it smells nice and yeasty, which for me, I love it. So in the recipe, you can either roll the dough out at this point, or you can just kind of cut it into pieces and roll out each individual piece. I'm looking, one moment, there it is. I got my bench scraper. So another fun thing with piroshki is, honestly, you can make them whatever size you want. You can make small ones for, you know, an hors d'oeuvre or to go with cocktails, or you can make them larger and they can be a meal in itself with some roasted vegetables or a really nice, beautiful salad. We're gonna make them kind of on the larger size today, just because I think that we're hungry and I think we would definitely like them to be kind of bigger. And so at this point, once I have them kind of cut up, you're pinching them together. You're taking the sides and you're closing it in on itself. And you're gonna end up sort of with this nice sphere. So you're gonna just do that with all the pieces. And like I said, you can either do it this way where you cut them into pieces and then roll out each individual piece, or you can roll out the entire piece of dough and stamp it out with a cutter or a plate or a cup, whatever honestly you have on hand. There's really no rules for this, and it's pretty free form, and you know, don't go crazy. Do whatever's easiest. These are honestly really perfect for a weeknight dinner if you don't have a lot of time, because as you can see, they come together super fast. So at this point, I have my piece of dough and I have my floured rolling pin, and kind of just from the middle out, I'm going to be rolling it into a nice just circle shape. Like I said, we're going on the bigger side today because I think we would like to have a giant piroshki for dinner. And yeah, it's for Trina, honestly. She really wanted a nice big one. So when I say big, we're talking about like, I don't know, like an individual size, maybe like wood fire pizza. Because they're obviously going to shrink a little bit when we, you know, close them and shape them. But so you're basically going to do that with each one and just kind of go from there. You know, it's funny, we talk a lot about how like our background is, you know, obviously it's in restaurants and being chefs. Trina's worked in the industry for, I don't know, maybe 14 years at this point. I've been doing this for maybe 10, 11 years. And we kind of were talking about how our perspective has shifted and changed a little bit during COVID. Just in the sense that, you know, I think there's pressure on chefs and on restaurants and on restaurateurs to really give the public what they want and to constantly, you know, be making this very Instagrammable sort of trendy food. And I think particularly for us and for, I think a lot of our colleagues, really, COVID has kind of reset expectations and desires for a lot of us. You know, I think that there's sort of been, I don't know how to exactly say it, but I think that a lot of us has kind of gone back to this idea of like what got us into cooking, like what was it about food that attracted us to this industry? And for us, it's really been about creating those dishes that like bring some sort of comfort and joy and familiarity. And part of that has really also been sort of connecting with the people who come and buy our food from us. You know, we've had this like dedicated Eastern European sort of base who, you know, maybe haven't seen their family in a while, and, you know, they miss their babushka or they miss their mama and they haven't seen them. And, you know, maybe something that we made them feel a little bit closer to them, or we have, you know, you know, people who have been locked inside their house for a year and have had, you know, no ability to really like have any sort of like adventure and excitement and change to the monotony, you know, of what this last year has been. And they say, you know, that eating, you know, this kind of food has kind of brought that excitement to them. I'm gonna turn the temperature up. Gonna squeak. But so, you know, part of what we do really is this connection with the people who are eating our food. And I think that has been really special for us. But so at this point, we have our piroshki dough rolled out. And so, like we said in the recipe, if you've had your filling already made, this is our filling, which is potato, caramelized onion, and dill with, as my mom would like it, lots and lots of pieres, lots of pepper. She didn't really like a lot of seasoning. She didn't like a lot of salt. She liked a lot of pepper. If she didn't cough, there wasn't enough pepper. So at this point, you're going to take a pretty good spoonful. Just kind of mash it down in the middle. Don't be shy with the filling. You don't want empty piroshki. You want them nice and full. Big Air is over here saying he wants them really, really full. So I wish you guys could smell this, because you can smell the sauerkraut and the butter and the dill, and it just smells really, really, really good. And it honestly really smells like home. Big Air and I will be here for quality control later. All right, so oil's almost where it needs to be. This is the fun part, and it's not really too tricky, but so you have your filling, and what you want to do is I like to go from the middle out, and you're going to pinch the seam. You're going to bring those two ends together, and you're going to pinch it really well. And you don't want too much flour when you're doing this, because you want sort of the stickiness of the dough to seal it. And if there's too much flour, you're not really going to get that. So you're going to pinch it, and you're going to kind of flatten it out a little bit. And what you end up with is something that sort of looks like a football. And then you have the seam that's fully shut. And that's kind of your dough. So when I said these were big, I mean, these are going to be big. They're going to be like a really nice, hefty, you know, meal. And, you know, you can always cut them and share them. Or like I said, you can make them into smaller sort of cocktail size piroshki that you can, you know, have a little shot of vodka or drink a little wine, and, you know, you're not going to get too full, and it's not going to keep you from getting your buzz. So you're going to pinch it, you're going to push it down, and you're just going to kind of form it. This recipe is making essentially 4 giant ones, or if you made a smaller version, you'll probably get about a dozen. And like I said, same thing. If you didn't want to fry them, you can bake them. The only difference is after you shape them, you would do a second proof for about maybe another 30 minutes to an hour. We're not doing that because we're frying them. And you would just bake them at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes after you put a little egg wash on it. And honestly, those would be just as delicious. But like I said, we're a fried family here. So I'm just forming the last one. Closing it, and the oil should be just about ready. You don't want it too hot because it'll burn. But so very gently, I'm going to take it. I have an offset little spatula, and it's going to go right into the oil. Since these are so big, I'm just going to fry one at a time, because I'm not going to get too crazy. And also, if you overcrowd it, you know, you're not going to really be able to regulate the temperature of the oil, and you'll get, you know, soggy instead of nice, fluffy, kind of crispy piroshki. Trina, you want to come take a look?
Of course, quality control coming in.
Yeah. Is that the size?
These are the best things in the entire world, really, because you can take them anywhere. They bake up really well. So you could bake them now, fry them now, reheat them later. They are the perfect for us. We go to Brighton Beach.
They're the best eaten in a swimsuit.
Yes.
On the beach.
Definitely in a swimsuit at all times.
I don't know. They're a great beach snack. I don't know. For anyone who hasn't had pitashki, they're so satisfying that, you know, it just tastes like comfort. And honestly, for anyone who grew up with pitashki, you know, you'll know that these are good. Ooh,
These are
that's
incredible.
a good color. So these look great. I'm very excited, as Trina can tell. It's the right golden brown. This just needs like another 2 minutes on this side, and we'll keep on frying them. And same thing, you can, you know, you can do it with sauces for dipping. A lot of times you can, you know, do a little yogurt mint sauce. You can do some ajika for a little heat if you want. I personally, I'm plain. I don't want anything with it. I like it by itself. Because then you can really taste like that nice sort of like oiled, salty, crispy dough. And then you have like this really beautiful mashed potato filling.
I mean, I agree, but sometimes I will definitely go for like a little hot sauce, or I'm sure Jess can talk more about it. We have a really favorite sauce called ajika, which we love to also eat with everything, really, everything.
Okay. So at this point, you got that? Okay. So this is coming out of the oil. It's nice to just put it on a plate that has some paper towels to sop up a little extra oil, although, you know, a little extra oil never killed anyone. And so at this point, you end up with something that looks like this. It's beautiful. It's golden brown. Smell that.
Yeah, it smells right.
And so we're going to keep frying. We're going to, yeah, I'm just going in.
It's going to be so hot.
Woo!
It's only mildly swelling my hands.
It's delicious.
Another fun thing about Eastern Europeans, or specifically Jessica, she needs everything like to a boil to ingest.
If it doesn't burn your mouth, you didn't do it right.
I will let this cool a little bit. It's very hot.
But that's piroshki.
Well, these those really look amazing, and I like your different takes on, you know, eating it right away versus giving it a little time. It's good to have different approaches. Just before we close, I just want to make sure we got a few a couple of quick questions, more technical ones, but we. Tatiana says, thank you very much for sharing. I can relate to many of your memories. She also loves your Olia apron. I'm not sure what that is, but
The woman that we gave a shout out to, so she collaborated with this linen apron company in Ireland, and that's the apron I'm wearing.
Amazing. Okay, so Tatiana wants to know, can you specify what yellow potatoes are best to use?
I mean, I think it's your preference. We definitely do, like, if you go to a grocery store, you can buy butter potatoes, you can buy, I don't know, like any really, like,
I will say we're not too particular on what kind of potato. You didn't even have to use yellow potato. You really honestly can use any sort of potato that you want for mashing. It's really honestly whatever is easiest for you to find. It won't impact the final product.
Nice. Okay, and also, so you mentioned a sauce. Can you spell the sauce that you like or share its ingredients?
Yes, so it's ADJIKA. And so it's sort of like, it's just like a spicy condiment. And so the thing is, you're not going to find two people that make it the same. It's such a versatile, specific sort of to every household dish. But common ingredients are herbs and oil, but you can use either bell peppers with no heat, or you can use like a spicy chili pepper if you like it on the hotter side. And it's just sort of like a fresh addition to, you know, tons of dishes.
Nice. And I don't want to distract attention from the delicious thing you just cooked, but I saw this question and I definitely have to ask, because it sounds incredible. But how did you come? Sandra wants to know, how did you come up with the khachapuri pelmeni idea?
Oh, well, we love pelmeni and we love khachapuri, and we figured, how bad could it be to take 4 cheeses and put them inside a dumpling?
Incredible. I think, yeah, that what could go wrong from that? That sounds perfect.
Yeah.
So for folks who want to keep on following Dacha, what should we look for? Where should we go?
Right now we just have our Instagram. We definitely, it's the most up-to-date information we can pass along to people. We are going to be in a space. It is going to be an incubator space with a bunch of wonderful people.
And we'll be posting it about on our Instagram. So really, if anyone wants to like stay up to date on everything that's happening, definitely check our Instagram, because we are definitely on there all the time, and, you know, constantly, you know, updating everyone on where you can find us, what you can get, and sort of just the, you know, the happenings at Dacha.
And we will have regular hours that are dependable soon. Right now it's kind of spur of the moment, but eventually, probably within a month's time, we are going to have regular operational hours weekly for everybody that is in Brooklyn.
Nice. And anything final that you want to add before we go?
Thanks for coming. This is definitely like our first webinar, so thank you for coming to hang out with us.
Yeah, we're just excited that people are as excited about this kind of food that, you know, as we are, and to see this many people wanting to cook it and eat it, you know, it kind of just makes us want to keep making it. So, you know, keep on coming.
Amazing. So thank you. Thanks so much for everyone who joined the call and watched along, cooked along. And thank you so much to both of you, Jessica and Trina, and to what you've made for sharing your stories, the recipe, your talents with us. We're really grateful that we got to make this connection with you, and we can't wait to see what comes next for you. You really
feel the same way.
And you really helped us show how food can provide such a powerful connection and meaning, and how it can really help us understand the world in a sharper and more nuanced way at a time when traveling isn't really feasible. So thank you so much. We can't wait to stay connected with you two. And for everyone else, please stay tuned for our next EntwineNosh program. The series is going to be happening once a quarter. So please stay tuned. And also, we have created our first ever Entwine community cookbook. So we're going to put the link to that in the chat, so you can see recipes from our community members and friends from all over the world. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to Dacha, and enjoy all of your piroshkis.
I know, we're about to go to town on these. Yeah, they're hot.